The wilderness can be a vast and beautiful place, but no matter where you are, Mother Nature is an unstoppable force. If you are planning to take a hike, try to stay on the trail and always keep an eye on everyone. If you don't see them for 1 minute, you might not ever see them again. The Smokey Mountains are a mountain range along the North Carolina and Tennessee border. It has been home to a number of weird stuff and strange disappearances and mysteries. One of the most familiar being the legend of Spearfinger. If you're familiar with the area or have been around there, you've probably heard of this one. I'm reading this from an excerpt from Heartside Cabin's blog. The legend of Spearfinger is one of the oldest in the Smoky Mountains. Her Cherokee name was Untulunta, which translates to, she had it sharp. This witch apparently had a spear-like finger on her right hand. She used this finger to cut her victims, and people say her mouth was stained with the blood from livers she ate from her victims. Her skin was made of stone, and she kept her heart in her right hand, which was her only weak spot. The Cherokee came together in a council to figure out how to kill Spearfinger. They dug a pit and filled it with stakes, then set a fire to draw her out. Spearfinger saw the fires and ran to where the men were. Spearfinger was also known for shapeshifting, and she appeared to the men as an old woman asking for help. The men saw through the ruse, and Spearfinger ran towards them but fell in a pit. Her stone skin broke the stakes in the bottom of the pit. The men fired arrows at her, but they did nothing. Birds, mice, and many other creatures came down to try to help kill Spearfinger. A chickadee landed on Spearfinger's right hand, and she began to tremble. Afraid the men had discovered where she hid her heart, the men noticed the chickadee and began aiming for her right hand. An arrow hit her wrist, separating her heart from her body. She sank to the ground, her spear finger twitching, and then she collapsed into the stone. This is a pretty common legend for the area. Another also pretty common legend / myth, or whatever you want to believe, that gets brought up a lot often is feral people and children disappearing. This post was made by 007 Stars on Reddit in the subreddit 411. Carolina side of the Great Smoky Mountains. Lived here my entire life. All of us here know what's in these woods and mountains. Since the 30s or 40s, there have been feral, wild men living in these mountains. They are fast. They will snatch livestock and snatch children. The FBI knows. It's why they do not get involved. I've heard other stories that there was some attempt to kill these feral wild men, but they still exist, even today. And I'm not talking about some end-of-days extremists who took to the woods. I mean feral, completely wild men, their own language, living underground. We do not go into the woods at night. During the day, we make sure to stay on the trails. Sometimes you will smell it, that putrid smell. At night, you'll hear them hollering, supposed inbreds. The locals around here know what happened to Dennis Martin. He was snatched by one of those feral wild men. It's not uncommon for people to go missing here. They are normally found, but you'd also be surprised on the number of children that simply disappear. The FBI has covered up for years. Where do you think the movie The Hills Have Eyes come from? It's true. I hear them from time to time. Disturbing sounds. They live all up and down the mountains here in national parks and forests. That was the end of this post. There's a lot of talks about feral people, and I will dive into detail about them. But let's take a minute, and he mentions Dennis Martin. Now, who was Dennis Martin? Dennis Martin was a 6-year-old boy who was visiting the national park with his dad, granddad, and brother Douglas. On Father's Day weekend, 1969, the camping trip was a tradition for them. They would hike from Cades Cove to Russell Field and camp overnight. On the following day, they would hike to the Spencer's Field near the Appalachian Trail, where they were planning to spend the night. Dennis disappeared at 4:30 p.m. He was planning on surprising the adults with his brother and other children from a family they met on the trail. His father last saw him going behind a bush to hide. The other children jumped out, and after a few minutes, when Dennis didn't come out as well, they began searching for him. They searched for a couple of hours while the others went hiking to a ranger station that was 9 miles away. When nightfall came, a thunderstorm came with it, and in a matter of hours, 3 inches of rainfall was washing out trails and flooding areas, sweeping away any footprints or evidence that might help find Dennis. And at night, it would become 50 degrees Fahrenheit. The search would peak at 1,400 people searching for Dennis, but in the end, nothing was ever found of him, and many theories have suggested what may have happened to him. The most logical, suggested by the rangers, was that he died of exposure or was eaten by a bear or a feral pig. The other theories are less Mother Nature and more human's worst side coming out. Another possible theory was that he was abducted. His own family believes someone may have kidnapped their son. Harold Key was a man who was camping about 7 miles away from the Spence field the day Dennis Martin went missing. That afternoon, Harold heard a sickening scream and spotted an unkempt stranger hurrying through the woods. But then this begins to ask more questions. If it was Dennis, how did he get 7 miles away from his family in a matter of time from seeing his brother and then him going missing? They don't have an exact time, so they don't know exactly when he heard a sickening scream. And then, if it wasn't Dennis, then who was it? Years later, a ginseng hunter reported finding a skeleton 3 miles downhill from where Dennis went missing. But the man waited to report the skeleton because he was illegally taking ginseng from the park. But in 1985, he contacted a Park Service ranger. They put a crew to locate, but then they could not find the skeleton. Now the family will never know if that was their boy or not, and if it wasn't, whose kid was it? Redditor 007 Stars posted this on the Missing 411 subreddit 1 year after his previous post. Since the 1840s, there have been reports of feral men roaming the Great Smoky Mountains from Tennessee, North Carolina, all the way through West Virginia. They hide in caves, tunnels, and bunkers, some designed by their own hand. These feral wild men are described as being part man and part creature, inbreds with major deformities. They may be responsible for hundreds of missing people in this Great Smoky Mountains. Their traps in the hills are designed strategically at ground level for people to fall into, leaving them deep into their tunnels. The feral wild men will devour you to leave nothing left. They will hide in the treetops, watching and waiting for you to wander off trail. Their smell is putrid and unmistakable. Unlike Bigfoot, their clans are not plentiful, and they do a great job at staying hidden. Where did these feral people come from, and who are they connected to? How long have we known about them? Doing some more research, you come across people who live in the area, and it's pretty much an expected fact that they are feral people now. And then a Redditor by the name of Highway King 324 reported this. Yeah, there definitely are feral people. My brother got a job as a forest ranger in West Virginia after college. A lot of FBI monitoring and partnership is done, as ferals have attacked park rangers, campers, and even destroyed logging equipment. Here we have two different accounts of feral people and people who are close to the park in that area, that it is an accepted fact that there are feral people, and the FBI investigations. The government knows about these feral people. Browsing YouTube, I searched and found a video that will be in the link in the description, and it's this man who lives there in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. He's at a cemetery of some sorts, and he's talking about how they widely accept that dogs, chickens, light animals go missing, and they all know what really took Dennis Martin. It really seems like this might actually be the truth, and the government holds all kinds of secrets from us. Maybe one day they'll tell us about these feral people, and then they'll turn their attention away from some of the bigger truths that the government is hiding from us. Maybe the feral people really are real. Maybe Dennis just tripped and fell. Maybe we'll really never know. I hope you enjoyed or found this a little bit interesting. I encourage you to do your own research. All links that I have used will be in the description below. Thank you. You have a good night, and don't let the big bugs bite.